Hey y'all, how's it going? Good to see you. I can barely see you though because I don't have my glasses on, which I now do. Is there a roll call? What happened to Pittsburgh? What happened to Pittsburgh? Are you guys talking sports ball? I don't understand the sports ball. Hey, look at John with the roll call. There's Brian, there's Roger, there's Hank, there's Frank, there's John, there's Matthew, there's Eugene, there's Chuck, Jeff, Donna, Paul, Webb, Bill, another Paul, a David, and a Rob. By golly. Oh, there's a Deborah. Deborah just turned up. Seems like we got a bunch of people ready to do a thing. So why don't we? Okay. And also ran runner-up story for 2020. It is Monday, the 11th of January, 2021, and this is macOS Ken Live. So you've come back for more, have ya? Can't remember what that's from. Might be the Englishman who went up a hill and came down a mountain. Anyway, hi everybody, it's Ken. Ray, welcoming you into another edition of macOS Ken Live. This thing we do every Monday through Friday afternoon, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, other times, other places. If you're hearing this and you're not hearing it live, then you must have picked up the audio podcast or maybe caught the replay on YouTube. Lots of stuff going on. We're not going to talk about most of it. Second half of the show, we might touch briefly on the whole Parler thing because I got a couple of bits of feedback from the first edition. Well, I don't know what they were responding to actually. Might have been Monday's macOS Ken. It might have been Monday's in a few minutes. I'm not sure which. Either way, we can talk about a couple of bits of reaction from that. First half of the show, though, there's something that's been kicking around my head. Really for the past few weeks. I guess it was going into New Year, so maybe it was the past couple of weeks. Here on this live show, and you've heard me mention this before, we talked about runner-up stories for 2020. Because my assumption is that the top story for 2020 for Apple is the move to Apple Silicon. And so what's the runner-up? Lots of people had lots of different ideas. Some people said it was the fact that Apple was able to deliver during the pandemic. Some people said that it was other things. I'm forgetting now what some of those things were. The iPhone 5G, I suppose some people said. Honestly, I'm forgetting off the top of my head. There's been this one thing that's been kicking around in my head, though. That the runner-up story for 2020 might be work from home, especially for Apple. Now, we had 3 firms come out today with different numbers, and that's what is so frustrating about these numbers, but we'll go ahead and run through them really quickly. Gartner, IDC, and Canalys. Anyway, Gartner says that Apple shipped 6.9 million Macs during the December quarter. That was up from 5.25 million that it shipped in the year-ago quarter, marking growth of 31%. Apple was the number 4 vendor during the quarter, and its market share also grew 8.7%, up from 7.3 in the fourth quarter of 2020. Across all of 2020, Apple shipped an estimated 22.5 million Macs worldwide, marking 22.5% growth compared to 2019 when it shipped 18.3 million Macs. Apple was number 4, as we said before, for the entire year, trailing Lenovo, HP, and Dell. Those are the numbers. If you ask Gartner, if you ask IDC, though, Apple shipped an estimated 7.4 million Macs, up from 4.9 million in the year-ago quarter, for estimated growth of 49.2%. That is more units and correspondingly higher growth than what our friends at Gartner said. Across 2020, IDC suggests Apple shipped 23 million Macs, up 29.1% from the 18 million it shipped in 2019. That is 500,000 more than what Gartner said, and higher growth than the 22.5% seen by Gartner. According to a piece from Mac Rumors, data shared by Gartner and IDC is estimated and not reflective of Apple's actual sales, though historically, Mac Rumors says it's not usually too far off. if you're cool, if 500,000 to 1,000,000 is not too far off. The thing that used to frustrate me when Apple would report numbers is that we would have had all these Gartner and IDC numbers, and they would be wrong. And Apple would come out and say what the actual numbers were, and we would all forget how wrong Gartner and IDC were because a couple of months later, it was almost time for the next quarterly earnings call, and Gartner and IDC would be out there saying their stuff, and the numbers would be wrong. I don't feel like we stuck with them because they were historically correct. I feel like we stuck with them because they were consistent, even if they were consistently incorrect, because they were consistent in their methodology, and also because they're out there and they're loud. We used to not talk about Canalys or Canalys or whatever. We talk about them now because they've been out there and they've been loud for the past 3 or 4 years. Canalys says that Apple shipped 16% more Macs in 2020, which is way under the 22.5% seen by Gartner and the 29.1% seen by IDC. What's weird is Apple actually cites Canalys in some of its stuff on its earnings calls, which I don't understand because Apple has the actual numbers, but they cite somebody else's estimates about their numbers. So with 3 wildly disparate sets of numbers, why are we talking about those today? Because the one thing they all show is growth. And though I didn't read it in those pieces, all of that growth has to have been spurred by work from home. Now, I've been trying to hit on that, like where that breaks up or where that breaks down or how that comes across. And I don't know where any of it is. Is this people who are working for themselves, by themselves, figuring, well, if I'm going to spend money on a computer, I don't want to have to buy it again in a year or 2 or 3. So I'm going to go ahead and get a Mac, even though it might not be. I mean, certainly it's not the easiest thing to get. It's not the cheapest thing to get, but it's a workhorse. It's going to last. Is it people who are saying, man, if I'm going to be staring at this thing 9 hours a day, I want it to be nice? I mean, is that what's going on there? Is it businesses that were trying to keep people, I don't know, happy or make them feel better when they, sent everybody home and said you're going to be working from home, but I'll tell you what kind of computer do you want? I don't know which of those things that it was, but Mac growth is higher, it seems. I would almost say inarguably because of work from home. I would say inarguably. It's because of work from home. Okay. 1 year of boosted sales doesn't make that the most important second story of the year, the runner-up story of the year. The question that I'm finding myself wondering is how important our computer is going to be going forward. And I'm not saying they're not going to be. I'm also not saying they're going to be. I don't know. Lots more Macs in people's homes now, and people are going to be more comfortable having Macs in their homes, and that's fantastic. Are they going to keep thinking that they need to keep buying a whole computer? My mom several years ago, was using just a horrible little netbook. But the thing is, she didn't do that much on it, and also she didn't have didn't I don't know if it's that she didn't have the money to spend on the computer or if she just didn't want to, but she didn't want to spend a lot of money on a computer. And so there was this netbook that was like barely big enough for keys, but she could print from it. And yeah, she used that for a while. And then one time she was visiting me and we were talking about her computer and what she needed her computer to do. And when she was telling me everything that she thought she could do, needed for her computer, I said it sounded like really all she needed was an iPad. And I, let her use my iPad for the time that she was staying with me. And she went home and bought an iPad, not, at her home. I mean, she went back to her city and bought an iPad. That'd be weird, right? What, did she live in an Apple store? No, she lived in a Best Buy. Don't tell anybody. It's like that movie with that kid and that other person. Anyway, she didn't need a whole computer. And she's now moved off that. I think a lot of people still buy whole computers. Work from home has now opened people's eyes and their experience to working on a Mac. either when we go back to the office, assuming that people do go back to offices at some point, or just with, the way technology evolves, the way form factors evolve, are we going to need full computers? Are people still going to need full computers? Are they going to keep buying full computers out of habit, or will there be something else that they move on to? That is why I don't think we actually know whether work from home is the second most important story for Apple in 2020. We'll have to check back in 3 to 5 years, which, by the way, is how often people upgrade their computers. According to a note that we heard, I can't remember if it was today on macOS 10 or late last week, but there was a note from Katie Huberty that said people replace laptops every 3 years on average and desktops every 5 years on average. Now, unfortunately, she seemed to switch back and forth in that between businesses and consumers. So I don't know if it's consumers who replace their laptops every 3 years, or if it's businesses that do that, or if she's averaging where businesses do it every 2 years and consumers do it every four. I have no idea. Either way, we're not necessarily going to know whether work from home ends up being the second most important story for Apple, unless, of course, there's all the word of mouth. Unless, your friend is talking to you at the pub one day, if you're ever allowed to go back to the pub, and saying, yeah, I always thought they were overpriced toys, as one of my old bosses used to say. But it turns out, they do something for you. So that's the thing that keeps popping into my head over the past few days when I'm not thinking about the fall of Western civilization. Curious what your thoughts are on that, by the way. Is there room for another form factor? iPad's not going to be it. AR could see, that's the thing. That's where I start to get really excited about augmented reality. If you've got the processing power, but it's sitting in like a little brick that's over there, say maybe something the size of, I don't know, a Mac Mini, but you put on the glasses, right? The AR glasses, and it gives you whatever screen you want. You look down at your table and there's the keyboard that isn't really there. At that point, what are you selling people? Do you still call that a Mac? Or are you selling them a computing experience? What is that thing? And I know we're a few years away from that. I would like to believe we're only a few years away from that. I don't know. Didn't Ming Chi Kuo say earlier this year he's expecting something in AR from Apple this year? I want to believe. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Like I say, a couple of ways to do that. You can leave a comment on this video, or you could send me an email, info@macoscan.com, info, info@macoscan.com. And yeah, love to hear your thoughts. Coming up in just a second, we'll do some feedback tied to the Parler thing. First, though, I want to let you know about another show that I do, which is tearing it up on YouTube. I have a show called In a Few Minutes that I do. I think it might have been the middle of November the last time, or no, or early part of December might be the last time we had a full week of that show. Because it got broken up by special events, got broken up by the holidays, got broken up by, my losing track of time. What we have now, though, is a full week with Peter Cohen, formerly an Angry Mac Bastard, formerly a writer from Macworld, tech journalist from years and years, I tell ya. Also the very first guest on In a Few Minutes, before that show even had a name. In a Few Minutes technically turns one this week. It didn't launch publicly a year ago, but it started as a Patreon thing a year ago. So I decided I wanted to have Peter back on. We talk about a bunch of topics. Of course, top of mind this weekend was the whole Parler parlay thing. So we talked about that, which made a lot of people very happy. You can check out that show In a Few Minutes. It's either available as a just an audio thing with a still picture on YouTube. So on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/kenray, or you can subscribe to the podcast. Just look for In a Few Minutes wherever you subscribe to podcasts, and away we go. So if you listen to macOS Ken, I know you know The bones of the Parler story, Parler, used to be a social network, isn't right now, maybe again one day, who can say? Peter and I, on In a Few Minutes, talked over some of the thornier questions around it. On macOS Ken, I think I just sort of covered the news of it. I don't know which made people angry, but some of it made people angry. Rosemary wrote in to say, why is Apple and Twitter allowing Antifa, BLM, and communist leaders hate speech on their platforms? Hypocrites, with an exclamation point. It's all political. As for Amazon, I am closing my account. First Amendment rights violated! Exclamation point. Big tech companies have turned America into a dictator Hitler regime. Exclamation point. Will not support them any longer. Exclamation point. Exclamation point. Excuse me. So says Rosemary. I didn't find Rosemary's comment particularly interesting. What I found interesting actually was one from Nick. Nick wrote in to say, it should be noted that the most famous ad Apple ever did had a woman sending a big hammer into Big Brother's face. Is that incitement to violence, or is it an artistic statement exaggerated to make a point? I wish I had the Final Cut Pro chops to be able to overlay a bouquet of roses over the hammer she's carrying. Yeah, probably overkill from a guy who has an M1 Mac Mini on its way. But that's how I'm feeling right now. So says Nick. First of all, I like the fact that Nick wants to turn his anger into art. Even if it's not art that I would agree with, I like the fact that he's thinking it'd be cool to make a video. Because it would be cool to make a video. I wish I had the chops to make a video. I've got the chops to make audio. I don't do as much just making sort of creative or expressive audio as I used to, because I'm, too busy doing shows where I'm talking instead of creating soundscapes or what have you. Art is the point you're talking about, Nick. A fictional woman sending a fictional hammer into Big Brother's fictional face is not incitement to violence. If Apple had put a map up of Microsoft's Redwood offices or IBM's offices in New York, if Apple had put up a map of where to go and said that Apple was going to be marching with you, and then did all this talk about strength and what have you, that would be incitement to violence. So I think there's a bit of a difference there, but I appreciate your it was thinking outside the box. So good for Nick, even though I don't think Nick and I agree. I don't know if I want to talk much more about the parlay thing. Here's the one thing I would say. If they really did violate Apple's terms of service and Apple's terms of service and Google Play's terms of service, and if they really violated Parlay's own terms of service, it sounds like everybody was within their rights to pull them. I don't know strategically if it's the best idea, because now you have to figure out where all this conversation is being had. You could have a Parlay account and you could see what people were doing. As far as I know, I never had one. I didn't watch it. It sounds like everybody was within their rights to do what they did. The thing that I hit on earlier is we have rules, we have laws, and we have social norms. And the social norms are the weakest of those, it turns out. And I think if we all thought about it, we would have known that social norms were the things that could go first. The problem is social norms then lead to, sort of flouting rules. And usually people don't care if you flout the rules. I mean, depending on what the rules are, a lot of times you can get away with that. But the problem is if you get used to being able to flout the rules, suddenly you think, what are laws? They're just rules. And, rules are made to be broken. I do it all the time. I don't know. I don't know what the proper answer is on all of this. I feel like Amazon's got a lot of lawyers, Apple's got a lot of lawyers, Google Play has a lot of lawyers. I feel like they did legally what they felt they could do. And I also know that AWS is being sued, or Amazon's being sued by the CEO of Parler, because he either thinks he has a case or he just, wants to get in Amazon's face. And that's fine too. That's within his right. He can sue them. He should, if he feels like, I don't know, or he shouldn't. I don't know. Anyway, a lot of people want to say it's a free speech thing. If you want to say that, feel free to say that. If you want to write to me and say that, feel free to write to me and say that. I'm not going to answer all the emails, but I might. So there we go. I would love to not talk about the parlay thing anymore. I'll bet I don't get to. Not. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for what we are doing today. I mentioned at the top of the show, this is a thing that we do live every day. There's a group of people in the chat room who come and they hang out and we talk, and it's fun. And I would love it if you were part of that group. Easiest way to do it is be here for the live show, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, other times, other places, youtube.com/KenRay. And then you can watch me sit here and not look at the camera most of the time and not look at the chat room any of the time. But then afterwards, it's a whole other thing. Got macOS Ken tomorrow, got In a Few Minutes tomorrow, got macOS Ken live again tomorrow afternoon. And I will talk to you soon. Hold up. Wait a minute. Right. I'm moving everything. I'm taking a sip of my coffee. Not moving everything. Just getting the stuff out of my way. Putting on my glasses. I am picking out a thermos for you. Where are we? Okay. There's the roll call. So I'm starting after the roll call. The NFL on Nickelodeon? Is that true? I hope that's not true, because then I don't think Nickelodeon is Nickelodeon anymore. Did I read something about Apple and Hyundai teaming up for a car? Asked Matthew. Yeah, that was mentioned on today's macOS Ken. I'm not saying I don't believe it. I'm saying Hyundai has been back and forth on that story. I want to say it was early Friday or Thursday night into Friday morning that there was a report where Hyundai said they were talking to Apple, and then Hyundai walked that back and said, we're talking to lots of people. And then there was another report over the weekend that had Korea IT News, I believe it was, saying that Apple and Hyundai are expected to sign some kind of deal in March. They would have a beta of the car out on in 2022. Still, apparently, with the idea of rolling it out in 2024. The only problem is until Apple says it, I don't know. Because here's what happened when Hyundai released their first message. Hyundai shares went up 19%. I'm not saying Hyundai did anything nefarious. I'm not saying Hyundai misled. I'm saying there's too big a game of telephone tag there for me to feel comfortable saying it's going to happen. I do believe that Peter Cohen and I talk about that later this week, actually. He likes the idea of Apple partnering with Hyundai and thinks that could happen. You got some analysts like Katie Huberty saying she doesn't think they'll partner with anybody. I mean, they might hire a contract manufacturer like Magna Motors, Magna Motors, or somebody else to build the car for them, but not a Apple car by Hyundai or Hyundai Apple car or anything like that. So I don't know. It's an interesting story. We'll wait and see. I mean, we'll keep talking about it while we wait and see, but we'll wait and see. Where else are we? I'm still reading. Sorry. Everybody's talking about their cars and their car insurance. Last car I had was a 1995 Toyota Camry. It was a great car, but when I got to California, I had to spend like $1,000 to make it like safe. And then I took it for inspection. And they were like, "Yeah, you got an indicator light." So I took it to the only place I could find that would work on a car that old, and they said it's going to be another 2,500, 2,500, 2,700, and I paid $1,000 for that car a few years ago. So uh, I have not since gotten another car, but that's okay. There's another car in the household. Plus, I really like walking places. So you guys keep talking about your cars. I'm going to skip down. If Apple didn't produce a netbook, it was doomed. Chuck says, remember when analysts said that if Apple didn't produce a netbook, it was doomed? Would you argue that they filled that void with the iPad, Chuck? Not that they were doomed, because that's stupid anyway. But in 2009, when we first got the rumor of something coming in early 2010, that's when I started calling it the Mac tablet netbook thingy, because we didn't know what it was going to be. We thought it could be a tablet. We thought it could be a netbook. We thought it could be a floor topping. Oh, that's funny. Bill says we need Jason Snell to do a top 21 things that were going to doom Apple for 2021. So Brian, forgive me. Brian says, for me, I've already seen the movement towards less machines than we need all the time, thanks to docks. My work laptop is a mid-grade, but plugs into a dock with a lot of accessories such as monitors, document cameras, etc. You still need a computer, though, right? Like and according to Hoyle, a computer. I'm not saying you personally. I'm saying, does that indicate that people would be buying less machine, or they would just be buying fewer computers? Which may sound like a subtle distinction, but these are the kind of things I think about when you leave me alone too long. Bill says, unless you're a hardcore gamer, there really isn't a need to chase newer, faster desktops or laptops. You know, I keep wondering about that. So, does a next generation console take care of that for gamers, like a PS5 or whatever the Xbox thing is, the Xbox Series, whatever? Or is it still always going to be about the form factor and about the fact that they can trick it out themselves? I guess there's enough money that game developers still keep making games that are really optimized for desktops or laptops. Personally, I don't understand it because I hate using Windows enough that, I mean, I'm also not much of a game player. Over Thanksgiving, there was a game that I had been thinking about for quite a while that was on sale, and I went ahead and plunked down, I want to say $30 because it was 50% off. It's normally 60. I got it for my Xbox, and I played it over Thanksgiving, and there just hasn't been time since because I've been doing Christmas stuff or I've been working. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask that question, or maybe I'm the right person to ask that question just so somebody can say, "No, stupid, be quiet." I mean, it's weird to me that you need to have more computing power than they had to send people to the moon to play League of Legends. You know, it's strange to me. I mean, I would imagine there's more in the Xbox, and my Xbox is right there. That's why I'm pointing that way. I would imagine there's more computing power in my Xbox than in the server room that my dad used to maintain for Bell South. But you need a computer to. It's it. I don't know if it's form factor. I don't know if it's habit. I don't know if it's what's the word I'm looking for. I don't know if it's being able to customize it yourself. I don't know. If there are any hardcore gamers here who could tell me, or anybody who knows any hardcore gamers who can tell me, that'd be great. Because the only hardcore gamer I know is 14, and he would just say, "Because it's better." I'm looking for something a tiny bit more. A tiny bit more. Interesting. David says he likes the double big screens and the lesser price of the iMac. I'm using a MacBook Pro since my iMac died, and it's great, but I do miss my desktop. I had a desktop about 10 years ago, and it was great. I liked it. Um, Past couple of weeks, I've actually been missing that, but I think that has more to do with having a place that is where I work. The reason I love my laptop is because I can work anywhere. The downside about my laptop is that means everywhere is the office, which is both good and bad. Oh, see, Eugene, I don't think they would do that. I think they would probably program it differently. Eugene says the problem with AR is unfortunately the answer is floating signs in AR saying this way to the Senate chambers with arrows and face recognition of sitting members. It may be. Whew. See, I'm just thinking about it for around the home, but I get what you're saying, and you're not necessarily wrong. Bill gets the play of the game. Parler is suing for antitrust. Maybe they'll join the coalition for app fairness. Do you think they'd have them? Man, talk about epic trolling. I'll show myself out. Throwing a hammer into a face on a screen is completely the same as throwing an actual hammer into an actual face, says Paul, who I know is kidding. Because he follows it up saying, and now I'm throwing a palm into my own face. There you go. Yes, they did. John says, didn't Mythic Quest handle an insurrection by putting them all on a separate server like Star Trek did and did to Moriarty? Yeah. First of all, you're talking about one of my favorite Star Trek episodes. No. Yes. Yes. The first one was Elementary Dear Data. The second one was Ship in a Bottle, which I hate Ship in a Bottle. I feel like Moriarty was right the second time because they said, hey, we're going to look for a way to get you out of there. Then they didn't. Mythic Quest built a Nazi server and put all the Nazis on that server and let them fight each other without them knowing it, which is kind of amusing. And then they did Blood Ocean. Does what mean what? Oh, things jumped. Hold on. What happened? Oh, now you guys are answering the question that I was asking earlier. So I guess we got to the end of the show then. All right, I have to look into this Nickelodeon thing because you guys are weirding me out. See, what's funny is you're saying the Nickelodeon thing was interesting. I was one of three people I know who thought that Dennis Miller, back when he wasn't upsetting me, I thought he was a good addition to Monday Night Football, but I had never watched Monday Night Football before that. I was there because Dennis Miller was, and he still had a couple of really funny jokes. In retrospect, I can see why you wouldn't want that, but it worked for me for one night. All right. I think we've pretty much gotten to the end because I'm having trouble keeping track with who's answering what now. And I think we're now into answering questions that I was asking after the show. I need my own personal it's Roger, right? Who does that stuff for Tom. I don't want to go off on a rant here. No, I'll tell you what it was, Bill. What was so funny was so it was 2000 or 2001, I can't remember, and somebody scored a touchdown and they started playing Who Let the Dogs Out. And Dennis Miller was like, "Wow, is that new?" That was the thing that I thought was hilarious. Oh, Jeff is saying that Parler never served Amazon, so they have until 5 p.m., 51 minutes to do so. Going to be tough without a lawyer, would be my guess. Right. Oh my goodness, you guys. You make my head, I'm thinking about all the things that we can or will do with this show at some point. Thank you for being here for this part of it. I appreciate it. I would like to see it grow, which I know I keep saying. I need to figure out a plan to do that. Yeah, because I love this part. And I'm sorry I can't get this part into the other part of the show. We'll think, we'll talk, we'll do. I'm going to go turn this into an audio show. Then I'm going to start working on tomorrow's macOS Ken. Thank you guys all for being here very much. I appreciate it. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're doing well. Wash your hands. Don't do drugs unless they're prescribed by somebody or you really know it. Take care. That's what I'm trying to say. I'll talk to you soon. Oh, stay in school. That was the other one, right? Ciao.